Thank you for coming tonight. My first order of business is to introduce Dr. Tim Meyer. Tim is the Deputy County Executive under Mr. Patterson in charge of all economic development activities for the county. So Tim, if you would please, thank you. I'm using this handheld so I didn't have to adjust the mic stand for Tim's height there. It's a lot easier.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Brett, and what a pleasure it is to be here this evening. What a wonderful day outside. Obviously, it's competition for being in here this evening, but it's a delight to see everyone here and working together. As you know, there are three tenets of OSR. One is, of course, self-evaluation. Like any good operation, you always have to take a look at yourself and look at your environment and adjust yourself according to what you are able to perceive around your environment and how you fit into that niche. I think that is very valuable to step back for a moment and suggest that although we oftentimes think of public service as an entity that is separate from a private enterprise or retail, it follows the same principles. And of course, self-evaluation is one. Information sharing. Of course, you always want to know what your neighbor is doing, whether it's competition or support. How do you fit into that niche? And it's really, really critical to have that conversation. And of course, customer service. You always have to relate to those that you serve and support. I don't care if you're in private business or if you're in the public sector. Many years ago, I was a co-owner of a retail auto parts business. And I was 23 years old, and at that age you don't even know what you don't know. And so you plow into the future with the greatest intentions, but oftentimes you find yourself in a predicament that you later in life said, well, if I only would have. And you can prevent that by information sharing, working together. And I had a partnership, actually, it was with my next door neighbor of my father's. And so we had a rough couple of years as we tried to figure it out because we went at it alone. We went at it alone without really any knowledge of support, any knowledge of support of what the investment opportunities are, any knowledge of support, how we formulate our business plan against any type of community strategy. And so we struggled. And we finally turned ourselves profitable, but that almost was by mistake. And I'm suggesting that time is money. If I was to look back, if I could have recouped those 3 years and actually positioned what we had as a business effectively in the first 6 months, I probably would be much better off now simply by having those lessons and learning. There's another adage in business as well as community. If you're not growing, you're slowly dying. And I would suggest that we all have to grow. We've got an outrageous opportunity, and I'm using that word very deliberately. I came into this role. I was the former chancellor of Oakland Community College for 10 years. And our quest was this. It was to understand what the community needed as far as talent. And that's the big conversation now that's going on. As you all heard, we have a talent shortage. And that's one of those elements that seems to be a drag not only locally but in the national scene. I was just reading Bloomberg News at the beginning of the week, and they identified there are two major drags in the economy right now. Never mind the tariffs. But one of the major drags in the economy is the sense of impending inflation. And impending inflation is being driven primarily not by tariffs, but by access to talent, where employers are finding it more difficult to find those that can support their businesses, and so they're having to pay more for that talent. There's a shortage. And of course, as you know, the Fed's #1 job is to control inflation, so what do? They raise prime interest rates, which echo throughout the business community for all those who want to invest and develop the future. So we have to understand what as a talent organization, as a tier 1 supplier to businesses for talent, we have to understand what the needs of the businesses that we support from a community as it relates to access to capital. We have to also understand what it relates to what their needs are as it relates to infrastructure. And really, that's kind of the work that we do at Oakland Community College, is working with you and trying to dial in all the resources that we have available to make your communities thrive. I think it's really important, and I'm trying to connect the dots, probably an hour conversation in 5 minutes, but it's really important. When you grow, the county grows, okay? It's not the county growing in spite of you. You grow, the county grows, the entire environment grows, the quality of life grows. We see people who want to invest themselves and their families in the community. We see businesses wanting to come to the community. So our job is very simple, and that is to understand how we need to serve you so that you can support the citizenry and the businesses of your community. So I just wanted to give you a couple senses, my sense of awareness of really what this conversation is all about. It's networking, sharing that information. It's talking about how we can best serve our citizenry. And really, it's about critical self-evaluation, because you have to evaluate yourself each step of the way and look for ways for betterment. So with that, I really have the outstanding pleasure to welcome you this evening, and it's my honor to be among you. So thank you very much. It's just coffee.
Thank you, Tim. Does that work? Can you hear it? We have 23 communities registered here tonight. We typically don't do this, but if you could, real quick, your name, your community, and your role, real fast. Rick?
White Lake Township, Rick Kowal.
Township Supervisor.
Sean O'Neill, White Lake Township Planning Director. Jason Angeli, White Lake Community Development.
John?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rhonda Grove, White Lake Township Planning.
I'm Wanda Norman, I'm the grant writer for the community.
Sean King, Lake Orion Community Engagement Assistant.
Back card.
Matt Ray, Wanacek Township Planning Commission.
Mitch Canuck, I'm with the Construction Association of Michigan.
Oh, great. You guys?
Bill Oldham with the 8 Mile Boulevard
All
Association.
right. Nice to meet you.
Ryan Cram, Oakland County.
Mark Adams, Oakland County.
Burton Gustafson, City of Pontiac Planning and Development Manager.
Ken?
Ken Martin, Lathir Village Economic Development Director.
Glenn Sartori, Small Business Analyst, Oakland County.
Mike Young, Oxford Township Planning Commission Chairman.
Back there, Jordan? Or?
Mike Van Buren, Madison Heights DDA Chairman.
Jordan Twardy, the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Ferndale.
Ricky Bustler, Madison Heights DDA.
Brian Hartwell, Mayor Madison Heights.
Dan, you up?
Dan Hunter, Oakland County Economic Development.
Kevin? Yep.
Kevin Kmet, United Shore, Vice President of Building Operations.
Jordan Jonna, AF Jonna Development Management Company.
Josh Champagne, I work for Search Optics and EQBs out in Ferndale.
Up front, I guess?
Tim McLean, Community Development Director for the City of Berkeley.
Ginger Burke Miller, Finance Director, City of Berkeley.
Rochelle Love, Deputy City Manager, City of Berkeley.
Wendy Jean Muir, City of Grand Lake.
Christina Irwin, City of
I'm the City Manager.
I was waiting for that, sorry. I do human resources and event coordinating.
Tough act to follow. Jerry Wall, Washington Township Supervisor.
Ted Wade, Council Member of City of Orchard Lake.
Jerry McCollum, City of Orchard Lake Director of City Services. Al Patrick, Community Relations, Oakland Youth Services.
Yeah, great, thank you. I guess we have 63 communities in Oakland County if we count Grand Blanc now. I know that's great. That's great that you're here. I want to talk a little bit about the origin of One Stop Ready. There's a number of you that haven't been at one of these sessions before, so a little bit about the origin, what some changes we're planning, touch on the economic context that we're in right now to kind of cue it up for the panel discussion. And the real heart of the session is the panel discussion, give you the opportunity to bounce questions off investors that are investing their blood, sweat, tears, and dollars in Oakland County communities, and what things they look for in local communities that makes their businesses run smooth and things go easy for them. This is when One Stop Ready started in 2012. If you take a look at this graph, left-hand side is taxable value in SEV, years across the bottom, and gross levy up the right-hand side. The black line is the total county tax levy. From 2008 to 2012, it dropped by about $65 million. That was the budget hit that the county took in gross revenue over those years. All of you as communities felt that same hurt as well. It went down fast from 8 to 12. At that time is when the county started kicking around the idea of One Stop Ready, and the thought was, what can we do, or what forum can we provide for local communities so they can begin to communicate with each other, talk to the county, and begin to look at ways to address this economic hole that we were in. Originally, back in 2012, we met with 5 communities and had a number of meetings and looked at all kinds of different approaches to the challenge of the fiscal decline that we were in. What come out of it wasn't rocket science. It was the idea that the heavy lifting is done by the local cities and villages and township, as Dr. Meyer mentioned. It's at the local level that projects come in, you review, you approve, you issue building permits, you inspect buildings, issue CFOs. The real work is done at the local level. So what can we do to provide a forum for those local communities to begin to explore, self-evaluate, share information, and as a bottom line, provide outstanding customer service. We always encouraged all of the communities, as well as the county, to understand our strengths and capitalize on those strengths, refine our internal processes, focus on implementing your vision, and the vision comes from local leaders, the local elected officials, the local appointed officials. Above all, we always stress, think like an investor. And an investor can be a developer, it can be a homeowner. How does that investor perceive your community? Why would they locate their business there? Why would they want to build a building there? Why would they want to live in your community? And always be cognizant of their deadlines. What deadlines do they face to make their schedules, to meet their budgets, to get in and operating? Back in 2012 and the following years, we focused on these 5 best practices. Many of you have seen this. We have copies of this here. If you don't have a copy, please grab one and take it with you. It's a tool that you can use to take a look at these 5 best practice areas: pre-app meetings, getting your information on the internet, tracking projects, permitting, and a forum to provide community input. These we felt were 5 very tangible steps that local governments could take to make themselves more development ready. Over the years, we had 23 communities in the program. Many of them are here tonight. We have a few new communities represented as well. After 4 or 5 years, we finally decided to heed our own advice and take a look at the program, kind of self-evaluate where we were going with this. We met with many communities in the program, elected officials, appointed officials, and staff. Talked about the different academy classes, what their training needs were that they see in the future. Talked about our best practices report. Talked about our showcase event. We hold an event each year where the communities feature development properties that they're interested in seeing action on. And we set up an event to bring in developers, investors, and we typically have about 60 or 70 investors that get to meet face-to-face with local communities. They get to know them and understand what they're looking for in their communities. We looked at the MEDC, Redevelopment Ready program. There are similarities between One Stop Ready and Redevelopment Ready. The MEDC has made some pretty major changes over the last year, the most significant being that if a community wants to be eligible for certain grant funding from the state, you have to be engaged in Redevelopment Ready, or you don't even meet the eligibility requirements to apply. So how many now are engaged in RRC? I know quite a few, yeah. And that I know is a driving factor, and it's a very good program. There's overlap, but if you want to be eligible for those grants, you need to get with MEDC and understand the RRC process. How this all kind of rolled out toward the beginning of the year is we really want to open this up to all communities. We want to encourage everyone to come to the various sessions. This has been over the years one of the more popular ones. We want to continue the showcase. That was desired. The developers like the showcase. They had like the opportunity to meet with the communities and vice versa. We'll continue to offer technical assistance. We are available to facilitate joint meetings with planning commissions, elected body, and DDAs. We've done that. We've done research into adjacent community plans and zoning ordinance and done some comparative analysis for communities to see how they fit with their neighbors. We have a wealth of GIS and demographic data. We can do various types of analysis for you upon request. And we want to continue to offer these training workshops, and we're beginning to expand those offerings this year. We already had 2 this year. I don't know how many attended the January 30th ZBA training, but we had about 140 people in here from Oakland County communities for ZBA training. In March, we had Capital Improvements Program training. We had about 50 people there. These were things that we heard from the local communities were important things to have workshops on. The investor's perspective is tonight. On September 7th, we have a brownfield workshop in this room. We have EDCA, MEDC, and the county here. We'll be talking about the County Brownfield Authority and our brownfield grants through EPA, and the state will be talking about the state brownfield program. So if you have any sites that you think would be eligible, or if you want to find out if properties are eligible, that's an important one to be at. And then our showcase is on November 2nd across the street at Oakland Schools. We hope we can get as many as possible of Oakland County's 62 communities to be involved. Back to this slide that you saw earlier. That was 2012, 65 million in the hole over those years. Between 12 and 18, we're up to 37 million. So the county gross levy is still 37 million behind what it was in 2008. And you can see the orange bars are the equalized value, the SEV. SEV is almost back to where it was, but because of the combination of Headley and Proposal A, that taxable value, the blue line is just flat, and the levy parallels that. So as great as things are, as high as the SEVs are going, it still is years out before we get back to where we were in 2008, 2009. A little bit of continued optimistic news. We had our 33rd annual economic outlook prepared by U of M, and they look at jobs and growth over a 3-year span, and they are fairly accurate. Last year, their job projection was within, I think it was like within 0.8% of the actual job growth, and the year before they were low by about 0.3%, so it's quite inaccurate. They have a long history of accurate projections. They're seeing on the bottom half of this slide about 2% growth per year over the next 3 years through 2020, equating to about 42,000 jobs. The top half of the slide, 2010 to 2017, the county saw about 19% job growth, Michigan 14, and overall in the United States about 12.5. So the county is rebounding a little bit faster than state and nationwide, but there's still a ways to go. Out of these 42,000 jobs, here I'm pointing at the computer screen. You can't see that up there, I don't think. The 42,000 jobs over those next 3 years will just get us above a high point that we were in 2000. So it's taking 20 years to get back to the number of jobs in Oakland County that we had in 2000. So that's kind of a slow road to get back to where we were. This graph compares jobs in Michigan compared to jobs in Oakland County, and they're indexed or equalized at 100. So you can see the relative comparison over time. And the county dropped faster than the state, the blue line, down in 2010, but the county rebounded a little bit faster than the state overall. The 42,000 jobs, taking a look at them a little bit more closely, The top half of that slide shows that total job growth of 42,000. Most of those jobs, nearly 80%, will be in the middle and high wage area. So that's 35 grand to 75 and above 75,000 per year. That's most of the growth. That's also where most of the jobs exist today. If you look at the far right-hand column, the percent change, the percent change about across all wage levels is about equal, about 5-6% growth over those 3 years through 2020. So it still looks good. It's slow, steady growth. By 2020, jobs will be back to where they were 20 years ago. So that's encouraging. Now the reason you guys are here, and the part I want to get to, is the investor's perspective. And you know, we talk about the county and local government, and certainly the local governments play a big role in economic growth. But the real drivers of the economy are the businesses and the companies that are investing, and they're the ones that put their money on the line and build and develop and operate in Oakland County. And I think we have three very good ones here tonight. Those of you that have been here before know what it's about. It's a chance to pick their brain, to hear their views on what a community can do to help or hurt investment opportunities in their town. We've asked them to get a little bit into, and Dr. Meyer mentioned this, to talent attraction and retention. Where do they see that going? What do they do as business owners to help attract and retain talent, which is a big need going forward? And this is a chance to talk to them, to ask questions when they're not in front of you at a planning commission looking for approval or working through a building permitting process. Guys, can you come on up? I'd like to have you join me. We have Kevin Kmet, Vice President at United Shore, Jonna, Manager at AF Jonna Development and Management, and Josh Champagne, Director of Facilities for Search Optics and Incubizo. If you guys could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, have a seat, and just kind of introduce your business, where it's located, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Kevin?
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Being new to Pontiac, just a few months ago, we moved in June 4th. We moved 2,600 people. We're not new to Oakland County, though. We've been in Oakland County since 1986 when the company was founded. We were founded with 12 people. Now we have 2,600. So it's a fast-paced growth. In the last 2 years, we've added over 1,000 people to our staff, and we continue to grow. We're looking to grow another 700 people in the next 3 years. And one of our tenets is we want to be centralized to where the talent is, and we looked at Macomb, Wayne, other locations, and really we wanted to stay within 15 miles of Troy, and that was sort of our radius. So that's where we come from, that's what we're about. We do wholesale mortgage lending. We're the biggest lender that you've never heard of.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me tonight. My name is Jonna. I'm with my family company, AF Jonna Development and Management Company. We are a real estate development company here around town. We do a lot of work in Oakland Township, but we also are in Grand Blanc over there. So, we are a family company. I'm second generation in business. We're primarily retail, but we do multifamily and a little bit of office. We love mixed-use developments. I live in Oakland County, and I'm here to stay. We always look for more developments here in the community. Happy to get to know everyone here. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for inviting me here. This is my first time to one of these events. I really appreciate the opportunity. I work for Search Optics, which is in Ferndale. I'm here on the smaller side of the investor's perspective because what we're doing is taking what was a 2010 idea to get Search Optics into Michigan, because we do a lot of work with the automotive industry, to something that's now where we actually have purchased buildings around us. We bought some houses around us, and what we're working on is really a redevelopment of our little corner of the neighborhood, which we've been through brownfield. We're taking buildings that were nicotine stained, shag carpeting, things that people weren't interested in. We're looking to rehab a lot of that, and we're really proud to be in Oakland County and in Ferndale. And so thank you for having me here.
Dan, you want to?
Yeah. We'll just kind of share the microphone here. Dan Hunter, It's my privilege to be Deputy Director of Economic Development and Community Affairs. I'm still learning this county. I only joined a couple, 2-3 years ago, plus 30. So we really do thank all three of the panelists and their investments in Oakland County, small and large. It is what drives us. And you know, the economic forecast that Brett just showed, you know, 42,000 jobs is the forecast that the economy will support that. It doesn't mean that they'll be filled. With our current, what is it, about 3.5% unemployment rate, that's the hard part, that we have to work collaboratively, business and public sector, to make the environment to draw people here. But we have a long way to go in the tax base. I don't think, certainly not at the county, and I don't think at the community level, we're seeing you know, any laziness or, well, you know, things are going really good. We dug out of that hole in 2009 and 2010. I'm not seeing that, and I hope we don't, because we still have a long way to go. I would like to get to the point where we can begin to draw residents. We're drawing businesses, but draw people here to the Great Lakes State and Oakland County. So with that, we've got questions in three main areas up on the board here: site selection, entitlement process, and talent attraction and retention. Kind of go into the site selection. And we'll just kind of go with all three of you. What are some of the key factors? Maybe Jordan would be the best. What are some of the key factors you look for in a community when you're making an investment decision, besides location and availability of developable property? Maybe start with Jordan, and then we'll go to Josh and Kevin.
Thank you. Besides any incentive possible, location is retail for us. Location is a driven factor for us, but put that aside, I would say time is our biggest factor with any development. We have a saying in our office: when it lies, it dies. And timing on developments to go from point A to point B, how quick can we get there? We don't know the market forecast for there's great economists that tell us that we're going to be great, we're going to get our employment rates down, but we don't know that. Time is the biggest factor for us. We want to be in and out of development. We want to start it, build it, lease it, finance it out, and basically sell it to the end mortgages for a while, and keep management there. Anything that we can do to shave time off our developments is one of the major factors for us.
Are there places that you shy away from? Are there areas that you shy away from because you know it's going to take too long?
Yeah, there are stigmas with certain cities. A lot of them have changed in the recent days. They've come around. Building departments on how we build and what we build. Every building official interprets the building code a little differently, and it could hurt or help. It's a big factor for us. We put a lot of pride in our name and what we do and how we do it, just for saying we're going to do it right, and which we want to. We're here to stay. This is our home community here, and there are stigmas with certain cities, but we go and talk to everyone. If it's a good retail corner for us or a multifamily location, we're interested in talking and see how we can work. And, it's a partnership. It's not just us owning a property. When people tell me you own the property, no. First Bank owns it. It's a partnership with the community.
Jordan, what else do you look at? You mentioned retail, so peel that onion back a little bit. What are you looking at as a part of ultimately settling on a location or a number of locations?
So retail is obviously a corner with good access and good high traffic counts. Access is a major point for us. We like our multifamily to be close to some sort of expressways or close to downtown areas that have communities or different amenities already built in. Retail's sounds simple, but it's not, but it is very, very much location driven. Good high visibility. Signs are a big big important factor for us today. Signage is everything a business needs to survive. I think we think it should be controlled and done elegantly and nicely, but monument sizes are important. Access is hands down very important. And design of what you build and how you build it when you work with the city. You know, certain heights that you don't know what you get into with development and construction when you're underground, but certain heights of buildings are important to us. There's a whole array of different items that we look for, but it comes down to location too for retail.
What community do you think has the best site plan process that you worked with over the past few years?
I've worked with the city of Troy a few times. They have moved everything along pretty fast. They are pro-development right now, and they'll help you through the system on what to do, how to do, and so forth. All the cities are very open. It's more about, I would say, the obstacles that we have to get through that
you don't.
Sean, I don't mean to pick on White Lake over there, but certain things with just water taps, that can hurt a development. And so you don't expect a water tap to be so much to open a restaurant. It's just not feasible, and it hurts. But as far as the streamline there, Sean can move it forward very quick, but there was just certain obstacles in our way that it was hurting. Cities today are very open for development, which we love. It's just getting to the finish line in an orderly time.
Josh, looks like you're chomping at the bit.
So our site selection, I guess on the Search Optics side, so we've got offices globally. We've got some offices. We've got one in Dublin and Sydney, and Brazil has since moved into a new office because of expansion. We've got a space in the UK. We've got 2 offices in Canada, and our site selection is about like the living and the working for our employees, because our environment for our employees is very important, which is actually what helped attract Search Optics to Ferndale in the first place. It had been headquarters solely in San Diego, selling to automotive dealers, so also need an office here generally just from that perspective. But it was, where are the people that can come and work for us and enjoy working here, that want to be part of the team? And so for us, it's really wanting to be part of a community. So like say our search, this is outside of Oakland County, right? But our search for an office, when we went to Montreal, I fly up there, it's like 0 degrees outside, and we're like shuffling along these icy sidewalks. But what we're really after is what's close to transportation. Is this in an area where other development is going on? And if it is, it helps us understand that a neighborhood that's maybe affordable now is actually headed in a better direction that we want to be a part of. And that sort of activity really helps us know that we're in the right place. And then to tie that back into Ferndale in general is, it's the same reason that we are now saying that Search Optics is not the only entity on our property. And as we've had the opportunity to politely, accumulate some other parcels around us, we're saying this is the right place to do what we're working on doing, which is why you heard earlier we've got 2 titles, and I said I work for Incubizo. So we're opening up a co-working and shared workspace on our campus, and we're working towards a development of everything that's around us, because the live and work, and we think that we're really in the right place. So our site selection, on both sides, whether it's us trying to move into another landlord's building, or whether it's us working on our buildings and the future buildings that we want to work on, it's really, are we part of the right community that people want to be a part of?
And Kevin, yours is probably even a little bit different, but somewhat similar.
Well, ours is challenging for the fact that we started our search 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, with a company that's 2,200 people. One of our key search points was that all had to be under one roof. It would have been easy to bifurcate into several buildings and much cheaper from a real estate perspective. Where are you going to find a building that's 450 to 600,000 square foot anywhere in Michigan that you could quickly renovate affordably? So we looked at a lot of locations, including Summit Mall. Think about turning that into an office building. But we did look.
It's still available for phase 2.
Well, then we bifurcated, that wouldn't match our search criteria, but it was a challenge, and we were very open. And what we did is, again, with that search radius, we had a large employee base, so we come from a different perspective. We wanted to keep our current employees happy. Challenge was moving to a community that has a city income tax. That was not a very promising thing. We bridged that gap, but it's a challenge. So I want to throw everything out there that was a challenge from our side. The good news is Pontiac welcomed us with warm arms. They really stepped up to the plate from a building and construction department, fast-tracked our plans. We worked with Oakland County in our Brownfield initiative, and that was all very positive. So from a large corporation standpoint for communities, it really is, how do you provide the infrastructure to that building, work with them on a large-scale project in a timely manner. Couldn't agree more with my partners here that it really comes down to how can a city streamline their processes to make it user-friendly, so that you're not having to jump through hoops and bureaucracy to try to get things done. All that happened in Pontiac in a very positive way. They worked with us. We built 375,000 square feet, complete demolition to rebuild in 150 days, with a full-blown basketball court, everything soup to nuts. So I think from the standpoint, it really is taking a look at businesses coming in and trying to reduce the hurdles that are in front of them, because they have plenty of hurdles just doing their business, and they are really trying to bring a lot of jobs to your community.
There's a graph that we've used in this workshop before. We didn't show it today, but some of you will remember it's the site location process from the corporate side. We deal with a lot of the site selectors. Mark kind of specializes in that. And it has about 8 or 9 different boxes and squares on it, from demographics, traffic counts, obviously corporate customers, and all the way underneath, sort of behind those, is the entitlement process. And so we talk about that in terms of what our role is as community officials. But looking at that and understanding all of the work that goes into that from the corporate side or the business or the developer side, yes, the entitlement process is the prize. That's the door that opens that makes it all happen. But it's sort of it's at the end after all of that work. And so that kind of gets back to the time that's been spent and the need to be as efficient as possible. One of the things that we said in this program beginning early on is don't have to say yes all the time. It's got to fit planning and zoning, and it's got to fit. But to try to get to that decision quicker. So that if it is a no, you arrive at that and no problems at all. That's being one stop ready, using those 5 best practice tenets. Going back to master plan. As an investor, is a community zoning ordinance or master plan reviewed when a potential property is being analyzed for development? You have 3 different perspectives, so if you could comment on that, zoning or master plan. Or you just did it.
Master plans are great in our mind. It doesn't just say this is what has to be here, but this is the grand plan in the future. Times are evolving. We're the motor city, of course, but everyone has a car, but it's been changing. Parking counts and so forth are going down in my mind. There's a lot more people that are walking a lot more. These urban areas are getting a little bit more friendly. Anything that we can do to help a development, and even if it doesn't fit exactly the square into the hole, the circle. It doesn't really fit, but there's ways to look around it. I don't think it's just zoning for the property and what it is. We love mixed-use developments. We look for them. We think it's a future in growth with not just retail to put office, apartments above. We're looking at a couple different projects there. But we have a couple of cases that we have a shopping center that we have so many parking spaces, and we know it's going to work to put so much food, so much dry users service. There's not many dry users out there. It's all food and service oriented today, but we don't have enough parking spaces, and we don't want to build a sea of parking. There's the communities that say, okay, let's look at this a different way and say, how can we make this work? Is there parking studies that we can do? Is there something that can push this along? And it's the same thing with the zoning with an overlay map. You look at the zoning, it's not just single-story multifamily or single-story townhomes here, whatever they are. It's, if you do this, we can get this done. It gives a broader perspective on how a property can be looked at. 2 cents.
So we see what's going on around us. We're centered where we are. We own what we own, right? So our thing is we've been in the community for 8 years now. And, we've been getting, like I said a little bit earlier, just a little bit more land as we needed, and not even fully understanding exactly what we were going to do with it, but you get things at the right time. And you're like, okay, this works long term, we'll figure this out, right? And as the conversations with, because we're in Ferndale, as the conversations with Ferndale are evolving for what other types of I guess I'm going to call them nodes that are going on in the city, like, okay, we're going to do this type of thing over here, and we're going to try to get these types of businesses together. We've gotten introduced to, other property owners around us through the city, and we're now partnering with them on initiatives that are for the city, for us, for them, that start to make sense. And so it's really the master plan. We don't look at it as, I don't keep it on the wall and be like, oh, do we fit in with this? It's like, conversationally, what is going on in the city, and where is this headed, and what else is coming, and what's this person developing over here, and do we fit in with that? And so part of what we're working on for ourselves is we're going to be very close to bike lanes and people walking around. So, to Jordan's point about, transportation changing from giant parking fields to something more walkable. We see that in the community, and it's really sort of inspired us to think a little bit more about what we can do. We could have just stayed with the buildings that we've got and left it and been okay, but we're like, we see what's happening, and we see the ability to piggyback onto some very exciting things, and that's been really great for us.
Josh, do you see that as it almost sounds like it's an ongoing conversation with Jordan and the city and how that concept develops?
Sure. So next week, we're going to be in front of Planning Commission for preliminary discussion for, the planned unit development for what we're doing. And it's an ongoing conversation sort of in general anyway, even that leads us to say, here's something that looks like this, that functions like this, and this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think of this? But it's we've gone through brownfield, so we had conversations as we went through brownfield. We've gone through variance requests, so it's having conversations while we're going through variance requests. This is supporting this, is supporting this, is supporting this, and at the end, now we've got some pretty pictures and some site plans that say, what does everybody think of this? And so the conversation isn't, where it's just like, hey, give me all this information like this. It's really more partnership, because they're really, they're invested in us, so we're invested back because of that. It's been great for us. So, thank you, Jordan.
And Kevin, yours is probably different. You needed a big building that was available,
We need a
but
big building and a lot of parking.
you did a lot of stuff in the building that wouldn't be
Well,
conventional.
we have a very non-conventional building, and we're actually zoned, I believe it's light manufacturing in our building, even though it was basically an office building to begin with. Around us is manufacturing. So I think communities need to look at where their current legacy space is, what is it zoned, take a look at how they're zoning, if there's a way to pave the way for flexible zoning in the future, assembly of land for different uses, because there are some, Pontiac has some challenges that we worked through, and I think we're a tremendous add there, because they had a lot of GM closed down plants, and a lot of vacant space, a lot of Rust Belt area. But I mean, it's really, we didn't look at the zoning as being a problem, but we do look at parking being a problem. You mentioned signs. Signs were a problem on a property that's on 65 acres, and the codes don't recognize that. So you have to go to a Board of Appeals to get a sign appropriate for something that's 250 feet off a road, so the sign would have been a postage stamp. So it's communities that need to look at that and make sure that, number one, they're zoning it property. Look at the surrounding community. We want to be a partner with the residential. We have residential around us as well. So you don't want to infuse that culture shock between putting a giant office building in the middle of a residential neighborhood, but it lends itself more back the way it used to be, mixed use. You want your neighborhoods to be closer to these facilities. They could walk, ride their bikes. We have 20 people that ride their bike to work, and it's amazing. So it's one of these things, even though we still need 3,500 parking spots to sustain our growth, and for a building that's going to ultimately hold 4,500 people, that's a big challenge for a corporation and the surrounding area around it to support it. So we're also looking forward to restaurants to support and that kind of stuff. So the economic development around these areas is really important. I know that we're the big elephant in the room when it comes to these types of things, and we're probably the anomaly. But if you want a large corporation to relocate into Michigan and find a community and set up shop in your neighborhood, you have to be prepared to give them that ability.
Any questions on that topic? Zoning, master plan, comments?
Wonderful having professionals together solving problems. What is happening when you have to deal with the reality of a planning commission or a city council or a ZBA, and how you get them educated?
The floor is open, gentlemen.
All right, I'll jump in on this because we did have to go to ZBA and
Education.
Education, city council. It's really educating them what your intent is, and that you're not the evil monster coming into the community. And I know they're representing their constituency, and they really have the best interests at heart from their perspective. But I don't think sometimes they see the bigger picture from what the community could be if you brought in these folks. I have to, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Pontiac had a great planning commission. So they put together a nice package for us that explained very well to the city council, because they aren't builders, they're not developers. And I guess that is a challenge because it was a very contentious court, sort of say. But I think since we had the planning and development on our side, it really helped explain what the codes are, what the impact of those codes were, and how did it affect the neighboring area. It was very beneficial. So again, it's an alliance with the city to come up with that, and then educate the politicians, educate the council members and the ZBA members and stuff. So really, again, it's bringing a lot of people together and trying to create consensus on what is actually the ultimate best use of that land for that development.
I think I'll second what Kevin mentioned about having us have the opportunity to help to describe the intent and being open to hearing what is it that we're looking to do long-term, and how is it that we're going to deal with those things, whether it's in the short term now, or how are we phasing things in so that we're not creating the negative impact that could be, brought up in someone's potential worst case scenario in their mind. So when we go in front of, whether it's city council or planning, and they're asking questions and giving us an opportunity to just talk about it before making up their minds, and that's been very helpful for us.
ZBAs. I believe change is one of the hardest things for people to actually comprehend and agree to. It's taking something that's been the norm and changing it to something that hopefully is better. And this is the box that you need to stay in, it doesn't always fit. And how do you get someone to say, okay, I see your vision, this is what it is? I believe education is a big part of it. We recently went to the city of Livonia, which is not in Oakland County, but we went to their committee of the whole, and they had the city council there with enough decision makers. It was a public hearing, but it was done not in their big room, and it was more informal. And we explained to them, this is what the vision is. We're not just looking to do simple apartments, or we explained to them what our vision is with this project. And that went to a PUD, but education and communication are the two biggest factors. You have to be able to talk, and you have to have a point person to talk, so you have communication back and forth. If I'm going to the city and just saying, hey, this is what we want to do, and it may just be one person's vision, there has to be communication of the whole, saying, you know what, let's look at it this way instead of this way, and maybe there is a great understanding between these two projects and what you want to accomplish. Maybe you do need a third floor to make this work, and let's look at heights, let's look at everything around you and see how this can work. But, we've had good success with just being open and honest and showing exactly what it is, and communication. There's always an equal point to every discussion.
Thank you. I just have a comment to add on to that. So it's helpful for the business of the developer to, educate and have that vision and to take time. But it's also critical for the community to have that vision with the various entities. Highland Township has been phenomenal with the One Stop Ready program, as many other communities. But they now hold regular once-a-year meeting of the Township Board, the Downtown Development District, the ZBA, and the Planning Commission. And they've had us out on one occasion just to talk a little bit about the One Stop Ready program. I think that helped just kind of be a conversation starter. So incumbent on the community to try to have, obviously you have your staff and planning and development, but to have amongst the appointed and the elected some sense of that vision, so that when a developer comes forward, it's more efficient. Yes.
Just to basically dovetail to what you're talking about, what we do, our planning director, Brent Sepp, I'm Tom Krent from, I'm a planning commissioner in Troy. Brent puts together before the actual introduction of the project, he puts together a little slideshow for the audience, unsensitive ones, where you're going to get a couple hundred people coming in to complain about the new development. He'll put together a slide presentation that shows all the aspects of the master plan and the ordinance that apply to this particular maybe rezoning situation, and why we're making decisions the way we are. And I think it's really helpful. That takes the edge off of the public that has no clue about the ordinance, and they get up there many times, spout off stuff that has nothing to do with the project or anything else. It's all their personal feelings, but they aren't educated. So again, it's that kind of education process that Brent does a good job of letting the audience know. Of course, they work diligently with the developers to let them know all the requirements. But I think it's important to get the community behind a development as much as bringing that development forward. In Troy, we do have situations where we do get a lot of angry residents because of their feeling of not in my backyard kind of thing. One thing I just, if I may, bounce off of a couple of things that Kevin came up with and Josh about looking at the future and parking. I've read a few articles lately, and then even a couple of years back, about the impact that autonomous vehicles and other types of instant delivery cars like Lyft and others that are how they affect the requirements for parking. In Troy, we notice already we're reducing the requirements for parking, but in Cincinnati, a project developer developed a parking structure so that it can be converted into housing. All the levels are flat, so they're not, angled or ramped. So because they figure in 20, 30 years, the demand for vehicles won't be there, and they want to easily convert to another type of use for that structure. I thought that was interesting. The other one was about a municipality that was going to issue a 40-year bond issue for a parking structure, and then after they did their due diligence about what the projections for parking is going to be, they quashed the whole project because they figured in 40 years it was going to be only 25% occupied and it wouldn't pay for the bonds. So it was, those are the kind of things that the vehicles impact, the way we get around are impacting development. So just throw that out, get your opinion on that, what you're doing about it.
Well, from our end, we're not putting parking structures up, so we have just land banked. So the land can be redeveloped back into whatever we want it to be down the road. And I think the biggest thing when you're dealing with corporate structures like ours, which is very non-traditional, our 3-year plans are about as far out as we go. And we're looking at how are we developing, how are we going to get talent, how are they going to get to work, how are they going to get home over the next 3 years. So we don't have the luxury of doing a 40-year bond. So when you're looking at communities and developments, there's a lot of corporations like that are not going to put $22,000 per parking spots, parking structures up. They are looking for options. Public transit is, quite frankly, I don't think ever going to really be a big thing here for a long time. It will happen, everything always does. But from a corporate governance standpoint, we're looking at least 20 years out before it's a major impact. So for our end, we're looking at, yes, we might have a very large parking lot, think of a mall, but down the road we can redevelop that and add more structure to the building, we can change it and use that land to redevelop as what happens down, where's the crystal ball, who's got it? So from that end, I think that's a hamstrung thing. We were in Troy a long time, I love being in Troy, and I think I've worked with you directly on several projects on parking. But it's been a challenge a lot for businesses, and I'm hearing it over here as well. Short-term pain, and no one wants a parking lot. We were getting back to the zoning, and the governments, I'm just going to, because it keyed me in, and I was listening to a real estate show and people buy homes not looking at the master plan and don't realize that their backyard is actually zoned to be a mall or a strip mall. So you get all this uproar when it actually, that's probably what you were discussing. So, again, those types of things. Some people will welcome the development if it's been an eyesore. Some people will not, if it used to be where the deer came. So, again, parking lots are a necessary evil in the near term, and I'm talking near 10 years, before they're really going to be obsolete. So, from our end, we're just looking at how can we position ourselves today to be competitive. Quite frankly, how can we beat Quicken? So again, we're looking at what is the most feasible way to do things today, and right, wrong, or indifferent. That's the nature of it.
So you mentioned something that we've actually been talking about on our side, because depending on how much we do, we end up creating some pain points for ourselves by not having enough parking. We started talking about, okay, maybe we do have to do some structured parking. If it comes to it, do we need to do that? And I was talking with our owners, and I said, you need to make all of your floors flat, because what you're doing is so much longer term than, so Kevin's talking about, he's got a 3-year plan. We're talking about building buildings. We're past 3 years and how we're working out, does this make sense for us? And what do we do and what makes sense? And it was that we need whatever we do to work in the future so that we have some flexibility so that we can convert things, because we don't have the geographic luxury of having a lot of flat parking beyond our needs today. And so that's something that we're thinking about, is how do we make this a little bit safer for us long term? If we're putting a lot of money into something, can we turn it down the road when it isn't dilapidated and you still want to make money off it, but no one wants to pay you for parking anymore?
Well, if I hear that somebody needs a parking deck, there was a whole bunch south here on Telegraph.
We looked at those.
You looked at them. That's awesome. Redico, and they're keeping one. But they actually were looking for, because those could be disassembled like a Lego. Unfortunately, you know, they were mostly demolished, other than one. Community ombudsman. Is it important to have someone to go to as a developer or a business when you're working on a project?
Yes.
As a go-between.
Most definitely yes.
I would say yes.
Ombudswoman, ombudsman, or Linda Williams, I don't know where she is, she left, but she fills that capacity in Madison Heights.
If you can get a hold of her.
It is very important. And I just emailed Brent today, and he was my key person. I had a small question for him. He got back to me right away and said, no problem, this is what it is. You're fine with it. I didn't need to go to the city, knock on the door. Who do I talk to? I looked at Brent as the key person to go to, and he helped me out. He facilitated it all the way through. It's not just on a city level, but it's on the county level too. See, we have questions on, you know, a 100-year storm. 100-year storms are very expensive, and they add a ton of cost to projects. And we say, hey, can we get away with how can we look at a 20-year storm or a 10-year storm detention system? These issues, if you have a key person to go to and tells you exactly what it is and how it is, it saves us time, saves us energy, and a lot of headaches. Key people are definitely very important for any development for us.
Sometimes that person isn't who you think it is. Sometimes it's just a clerk in the building department. Once you find that person, you glom onto them because they seem to know how to get everything done. It's the Radar O'Reilly of any city. They can get things done efficiently, get you to the right people, get your piece of paper on the right stack, and cut through the chase. I think that was the key. And so you have to, as a community, identify who are your go-to people that don't have a problem crossing lines to say, I can get you to the right people. I can help you with this. And it doesn't necessarily be a high-ranking official. Like I said, mine was not. It was amazing. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical for us. I mean, it's frankly the reason that we're doing what we're doing. If this was something where we were going down to the city and running into problems, we would just be like, this isn't what we need to be doing right now. I mean, this started off as like a side job. And we're just like, oh, all right, that house got flooded, we'll take that. And as it started to grow, because of the ongoing conversations that we've had, and we knew that we had partners on the side, we're like, okay, we'll continue doing more. But if it was difficult to do business, we've just been like, this might not be worth the hassle for us. You know, like it's critical. You've got to have somebody that you can go to help you understand what's going on. Not to, say that I, can't make time for things, but if you tell me I got to go read 120 pages to learn about every ordinance and every way that every meeting connects to the next meeting, I mean, and that's a tough proposition for somebody to go through. You're having someone help navigate that and help show that path and help you get through some of that and understand exactly what the intent of some of these, rules and ordinances are. It's super important.
From the community folks that are here, do you know who that is in your community? Waterford?
Township planner, Larry Lockwood.
He's a go-to person.
He's a go-to person, yep. And again, the thing I find the most difficult is getting people to come into the 21st century. And Waterford's a primarily developed community. As you can understand, the summer play small, a lot of our stuff's going to be redevelopment. So with redevelopment comes brownfield, transformational brownfield. Well, you want to whine and complain, but the money isn't available for townships like it is cities, I can tell you that. That's one thing I learned in my 5.5 years in office. I spent 40.5 years in the construction business prior to becoming township supervisor. So I do have a background in development, working in developments and redevelopments, but the bottom line is getting everybody, not just the local municipalities, but your county, state, and federal government on board at the same time to work with you to make things happen. You know what I'm saying? So that's critical, but you got to have a go-to person and somebody who's open-minded. And I'll give you one example. The old Pontiac drive-in property in Waterford Township, okay? Schramm's Auto Parts has been there since 1924. They wanted to buy that and make it a U-Pull. Guess where they opened a U-Pull up? Plant 15 site downtown Pontiac, okay? Waterford did work with them back in 2010, and City of Pontiac did work with them. So I mean, again, you can make things happen, and you work with people. I said, we got a company been there since 1924, and a perfect opportunity to take a vacant piece of land. Guess what? It's still vacant. To put a U-Pull on there, and our previous planner drug his feet, made it difficult, and City of Pontiac got the U-Pull down there. So again, when you work with people, you can make it happen. But again, as I said, get them in the 21st century, make things happen. It is critical. And I said, you see it on a daily basis. Pontiac's primarily developed. Again, there was an auto plant there, they tore it down and then redeveloped it. So I mean, again, vacant piece of property, but it's being redeveloped. And a lot of that land down there is restricted because of the soil there. You either have to dig it all out and take it off site, or you've worked with what's there. Pontiac, they made it happen. Kudos to them.
It's a great project, and it's perfect for that site.
Perfect.
Of a heavy industrial, General Motors. I happened to, for Brooks, I was able to do the ribbon cutting with the mayor, and it's just a perfect fit. I mean, we're talking a multi-million-dollar business. Parts, you know, go in on your own. So we have an ombudsman, White Lake.
White Lake, I'd say our primary introduction being our planning department. That's pretty much the focal point that I've told people, because you know, the old adage, you know, fail to plan, plan to fail. And I try to impose that, so to speak, on everyone's mind. And I think our planning department does a good job getting people in the door and heading in the right direction. And we're very pro-development and trying to go in the right direction. And yes, we do have issues and challenges that we have, and they're not with the water, by the way. With sewer as it is in so many other communities. So we're trying to look at all these obstacles. And also look at the opportunities that we have as a community. I call us we're a border community. We're right between the Waterford, which is going through redevelopment, and Highland, which is still extremely rural. We're kind of that transition fringe community. The cows on 59 aren't there anymore. They were a few years ago. And it's changing, so we're forced to adapt to all those changes in a positive manner. And by having a proper planning department to get people in, to get them through the channeling, we seem to find that it seems to be attracting the right people, and hopefully they'll continue to do so.
Ombudsman, kind of a point person, helpful, kind of backing up even a little more, maybe a little broader, the importance of attitude.
Flexibility. Working with timelines, working with the challenges of the project, understanding what's got to happen. Again, we had just a colossal project in a ridiculously short time period. And if we didn't have the flexibility of the inspectors to come in, inspect partials, give us, you know, we did it 22 phases. So we were actually doing 22 different inspections on a single project, just to keep things. Now you can close this ceiling, now close this, and keep it rolling. You know, it's like rolling thunder, you gotta get it done. And I think if we didn't have that flexibility of the inspections and the trust that, you know, number one, they had to come in and they could open up anything and make sure we weren't doing anything bad. You know, that's not our intent as building owners. I'm not, you know, sure about, you know, everybody out there, but I'm pretty sure that the gentleman up here with me, you know, our intent is to build a safe environment for our team members, to follow the rules, and the inspectors are there to make sure that we're not missing anything. So it's a partnership, not an adversarial thing. So I think having that flexibility, being able to look at a project as a whole, listen, and come up with a plan that can help us out is pivotal to make your community shine.
I couldn't agree more. Attitude and what it is and how it's presented is definitely most of the battle. It is saying, you know, this is a good project. Here's what it is. Here's the materials. Here's how it can move along. We live in Michigan. We have a certain time period of construction. We can't let something sit. We can't let it be in the put on the side burners because it's not a good, doesn't fit the mold. We have a certain time period to get stuff done in Michigan, and attitude and how it's presented is definitely the big portion of what we deal with day in and day out.
I have one more thing. To add to what I said about that, not only do the inspections, plan review. Plan review is pivotal, the time period of plan review, accurate plan review. Nothing's worse than your building project, the plans were approved, and the inspections come out and says, oh, you can't do it this way, even though we have signed off plans that said we could. You know, mistakes are gonna happen, but again, it's how do we correct it? So it's working with them to figure out, number one, make sure they're accurate, make sure they're fully reviewed quickly, which I know all communities are stressed out with plan review because of the personnel and the amount of work that goes into that. And especially on a project that you have, I killed probably half the forest with the number of plans we had to submit. It's just a matter of time and trying to just do the best you can in that process. Because nothing is more frustrating from an owner's perspective and costly than having to tear something down because the inspector's interpretation didn't match the plan reviews. So it's very key.
Yeah, so I'm going last, so I have to just say I agree and I agree. Right? But we actually just had our building official out last week because we have that sort of positive, collaborative, relationship where we were doing an inspection, but I just wanted to make sure, hey, we don't want to get so far down the road that something comes back interpreted differently later, but we weren't scared to walk our building official through our project. We weren't like, it's conversational. Hey, we're talking about doing this and this and this. This is why we think this works and that. And it was a great conversation. That's super helpful for us, because now we're not, I can sleep at night about the stuff we've got going on instead of worrying about impending doom. So like that, that's, again, agreed.
Well, I mean, same thing, and just to reiterate, so you have your planning and you always have the fire. Fire seems to be always a little hiccup at the end as well. So again, having Waterford come in and did that courtesy walkthrough. Hey, this is our intent, this is what we're doing, this is our phasing, this is how we're gonna occupy the building. Tell us what your thoughts are. Let us accommodate that up front, as opposed to coming in and saying, oh, you can't do that. So very, very pivotal.
And really, when you talk about attitude, I had the pleasure of working with Search Optics and their leadership from San Diego. It was just myself and the city manager many years ago in Ferndale, and it was a very teetering process to where I'm sure they were going to go somewhere in Michigan, but they didn't have to go into Oakland County. They could have went anywhere. As Dan was saying, it's the business community that creates the jobs and the investment. It's not us. But having that right attitude to get them in, because it was a competitive situation, that went a long way. And for a software information technology company such as Search Optics to see what they're doing on that corner there, nobody could have had that vision in the first meetings that we had with their leadership, myself and the city manager. I think at the time Ferndale did not have economic development person there. So it was really a collaborative effort to get them here, and now to see that they're taking on the community and buying buildings. I know Jordan is leading the way, was sort of the go-to person for them right now, but going through their city councils and the brownfields and speaking on their behalf, it really made a big difference, and it's really a great success story that probably can be duplicated with all these communities here with the right attitude.
I mean, certainly having a recession, the Great Recession, still not too far in the rearview mirror. I think that improves the attitude. I think because you never know where an investor or developer is going to come in or walk into somebody. Yes, it might be the planning department, but it could be another department where they're calling in and asking for the water rate. So you say the recession's good, we don't want another one of those, but the attitude is certainly important. Brett, you got a question there? It looked like you were about ready to go.
I'm good. I'm listening there. Good answers. Good answers.
I got one that I'm actually going to pull something out from last year. Matt Kurlick was up here from Kirko, And he talked about ROI, return on investment. He said, we also have another thing. It's called ROA, return on aggravation. And so it really gets to this, the deal breaker. What are some of the things the community has done that has ruined a deal or a potential project? No names, but if you want to give the names, that's fine. But what are some of the things that could be corrected?
Well, with enough time and money, anything could be corrected, of course. Building departments are sometimes not on the same page with all the building inspectors, and could be interpreted many different ways. If you have a building inspector that wants to see every screw, and the next building inspector doesn't want to see 2 screws in the walls, it has to be a uniform process, and there has to be communication between everyone. It doesn't kill deals, it just bogs them down. I would say right now the biggest component we have are cost for the projects. It's not just communities, it's the cost to get these things up and done. We came out of a recession, I think more as a depression, to tell you the truth, and the costs have skyrocketed today, where it is every bit of 35% more in cost to do a project, and underground utilities and soils are the biggest component to developments. You know your upright cost. You don't know what's in the ground and what it is. And detention is a huge portion of a project. When you're going a brand new project, you have to detain so much water and retain it and so forth. It's a big burden that we put so much pipe in the ground that, if there ever was an apocalypse, we could just go to one of the shopping centers and crawl down one of them, and it's literally there are bunkers in the ground to hold water. That, in my mind, I think they're over-engineered. These things really do put a burden on projects. You don't realize the cost to put in these detentions and put in all of these improvements that, I agree, they need them. But to the extent they need them is a different story in my mind. Communities today have actually been very good to work with. They like development. They see the growth. They want growth in their communities. And we're happy to give it to, happy to do it. I said before, it's a partnership. It's not just us. It is definitely a partnership. And however it can be successful, it should be the goal of everyone. It should be, having a vacant building in any community is not what you want. It has a bad reputation for the community, a bad reputation for the developer, and to get it done is the goal, and everyone has to work towards that.
Back in the day, I think it was a bigger problem than it is now. I think with that recession, we have had more cooperation from the cities and states and that. And I've only been at United Shore for 4 years. Before that, I was at Deloitte for 7 years doing their corporate real estate across the nation. And right at 2008, and I remember trying to put up a building, small building, and got down to the point where they were dictating the color of our back door, what color it had to be as a community. We walked, because we knew if we were starting to get that kind of level of micro design and micromanagement of a project, we didn't want to be any part of it. Because it's just a matter of let your customers bring their ideas in and don't try to dictate what we say. We use corporate standard, city standard. And you got to have a green door in the back. Again, little things like that. And that's just a very brief example, but I think what I've seen previous to United Shore, and I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about it, is the communities want you there. There's a big change, and I think that philosophical change of they're not just there to do a job as a necessity, as a city service. I think if they have the corporate development and the development in mind, and they're there to help, that's the key. So there are cities that do a better job at it. I think the cities like Pontiac's, they're trying to redevelop and take their old infrastructure that's crumbling and renovate it, are doing a much better job personally than the communities that are the strong communities that have this comfort level. You do it our way or go somewhere else, we don't care. So, from that.
Jordan, I was going to ask you cost. So is there a one or two elements that are really significant parts of that cost, or is it time, infrastructure?
Labor today is very, very difficult to find. Skilled tradesmen, it seems like they all moved away when we hit a bad time. They're slowly coming back. And to find people to work and diligently is a very difficult situation we're in right now. All of our material costs have gone up. Just look at steel. Everything's gone up across the board. And you know, it's a rising economy, so everything should be going up, but we got to get rents and everything to match that too. So it's definitely a puzzle that we have to put together.
All right, Brett. You good? The pre-application meetings, show of hands in terms of communities that are doing those on a regular basis. That would seem to really help kind of maybe not kill or eradicate deal breakers, but that communication, that collaboration would really seem to help. Throw it out for any comment. Jordan.
I would just say it does help. I mean, a lot of what we try to do, and I think what Troy is doing, I think that's a great example, as our master plans kind of come to life, like this whole walking the community through like what is exactly happening and putting it in terms that they can understand has been huge. And these pre-application meetings, just as much as like the community laying our cards down, when the developers do the same and when the businesses do the same, that helps us, that sort of that Jerry Maguire, it kind of helps us to help you. In the sense that if we know what we've elevated even our incentive conversations to, instead of, you know, what goodies are we going to get for these incentives, it's show us your gap and let's show us how, if we're asking you for inset parking, what does that do to your ROI? And we can start finding wiggle room for that. We have incentive policies that, you know, we won't let a brownfield TIF be more than 20 years, but if an extra 5 years of TIF will get us a pocket park and some other benefits, we can have that wiggle room. But it helps when we have that sort of two-way. And what we found is when the city lays their cards for, I'd be curious to your reactions to this, but what we found is when the city lays our cards down, that sets a tone of trust right from the start. Here are all the steps, here's everything you're gonna have to do and all the pitfalls. We just cut right to it and say that. And then what we found is developers sort of follow in suit, and that shapes probably half a year off of every project, just doing that.
Go ahead. So I'll answer to, you know, Ferndale laying their cards out and the trust that builds is, one of the parcels that we were after, we weren't dealing with somebody that we really wanted to deal with anymore, and we got to a point where we went to the city and we said, look, this is the situation that we're in. Everything stops and stays the way that it is. But if we go down this road, you know, there's some other things like the incentive of us vacating the street to us, which actually made that parcel more attractive because it wasn't limited to that parcel, and we knew the flexibility that was going to create for us. It wasn't a guarantee when we, you know, overpaid for one of the pieces that we needed, but it was, yeah, this is likely going to happen. The leadership is behind this, and we appreciate that, and so we went out on a limb, and it worked out for us. But if it felt like a cagey relationship back and forth, I mean, what are we able to rely on if we're making those decisions? Is this city treating other people that way? I mean, because we don't want to do something in an island, you know, so if other people are we're being treated well in the city, we're assuming that other people are being treated well, and we assume that this is one of those like broader investments across that ends up being very positive for everybody, and, you know, you know, for us it's been great. So, you know, he says, you know, building trust, that's been very key for us, you know, in what we're doing.
We're moving down to the talent attraction and retention. How do these factors influence talent attraction and retention? Downtown mixed use, schools, housing choice, recreation and cultural amenities, transportation, and maybe some others. Have at it.
Full-blown basketball court, volleyball court, game room, gym, doctor's office, massage, haircuts, store. It's all in our building. It's all about taking...
Movie theater?
We do have a full-blown theater.
Arcade?
We do have an arcade. Pinball, if you're into pinball.
Can I apply for a job?
Sure. So, number one, so from our perspective, being a large, very large employer, I think we're the second, soon to be the first largest employer in Pontiac. But millennials, the new way of working. We want to be, when you come to work, you come, you work, you do your 8 hours, and you don't have to worry about stopping at home to hit the gym. You don't have to worry about your dry cleaning. It's there for you. If you need milk, cereal, you go to the store. It's in our building. You can get it. You don't have to, you can go home, enjoy your family, 8 hours. That's our goal, and that's what we want to espouse to. Take your time, enjoy, work hard, but also play hard. Come to work and enjoy work. Don't come to work to an office building and drudge all day long. So we give the opportunities to our team members. So from our end, it's a different culture and it's a different way of thinking. There is no ROI on what a $1.8 million basketball court has. There's none. You can't put an ROI on it. What you can do is look at the team members and their satisfaction surveys and are they happy? Because they could make more money going somewhere else. We make no bones about it. We're not the highest paid company, but we pay fairly. We treat them with respect. We have a lot of very, very happy people, and that's huge. So, I mean, from that end of it, we're a different animal. We try to be as progressive as we can and still run a business, but I think we have amenities that no one else has.
And maybe that basketball court. I've been trying to get Brooks to build one, somewhere in here, but I don't think that's going to happen. No.
Food truck, putting greens, indoors and out, amphitheater, bowling, cornhole.
We actually had an intern here, who then we kind of brought on a part-time basis, and you guys got her, degree from OU. We saw her a couple of months after. Oh, she was so happy. We didn't have anything for her here at the time, and it wasn't, really the right mix in terms of her experience. But wow, so kudos. Josh?
Just curious here, when do you guys have time to work?
That's just it. People come in 2 hours early. They have an hour lunch. They stay late, but they're not working. They're having fun. They're doing stuff. They have leagues. So it's a lot of different things. We work a firm 40. There's no doubt about it. We grind. But we grind all day, every day through the week. Friday's no different than a Monday, but you know that you can go have fun at lunch. That kind of stuff is just, you can't put a price tag on it. And you just look at the people, they're smiling. We're attracting talent. We train. Walk off the street. We have a 8,000 square foot training center. Come off the street. You don't have no background in mortgages. We'll train you. Soup to nuts, come on in.
What is your retention rate?
Right now, our retention rate is right around 92%.
That's where you make your money right there.
Training and
Now,
bringing on new
keeping
employees
the
is the most
people.
expensive thing.
Yeah.
Not having to retrain.
Right. And we put on between 35 to 60 people every Monday. Come on down, see our new hires.
You ought to hook up with a shuttle over to the M1 concourse. The employees might not come back if they're on their lunch break.
We have a shuttle.
You have a shuttle.
What type of events do you do for downtown Pontiac? I know you have everything sort of enclosed, but I know what Pontiac is trying to do with their downtown, and it would be great to get some of those workers to come downtown instead of staying in your building.
We've only been here 7 weeks.
I'll put that thought in your head right now.
So we do a lot of community events. We do rallies. We'll be doing some rallies this year in September. In our parking lot, we're looking to do many different community events. Downtown partnerships are very important to us. So we're looking at partnerships so that our team members get discounts, are attracted to go downtown. And that's key. So we are working with that. Our community development people and our employee engagement team is second to none as far as coming up with these. And that's huge for us. It's a strong downtown and a strong collaboration of we want our team members to go out and be together and have fun. So that's key. So.
Any other thoughts? Got final takeaways? from the investor developers?
So for us, I mean, to expand a little bit on, you know, what Kevin was getting into is we're not building quite as many amenities. But what we're really hoping for in our PUD is to have other people come in and make it a place that people want to be. So, you know, we've got a restaurant that's on our campus that we're very proud of, and we're really excited about that. And people are happy to be near that. You know, some of the other stuff that we're looking at is we'd like to capitalize on that even more and bring in another restaurant and food service. You start pairing that with office space, and there's some back and forth where people are happy to be there, but they're also having that, you know, reciprocal economy. And, you know, so on our employee retention side, it's all the offices that we look into. It isn't just, you know, in Oakland County. I mean, you know, globally it all has to be, can people get to it, you know, all that sort of thing. But we, in our investment in what we're doing, you know, on our campus in Ferndale is we want it to be a place that people want to be. There has to be that huge sense of community, and we won't have enough for basketball leagues, but I think that that's awesome that you guys are able to do that, because that sense of community is super important. And so we want to be part of that, and we want to be able to add to that so that it isn't just us, the residents that live around us, the other businesses that are around us. You know, we're friends with a developer, you know, to the north of us. I send them, you know, leads on people that are looking for space just because they don't fit exactly what we're looking for. We really want that partnership, and then our employees see that, and we're saying, look, we're building out that building across the street for you to move into. They're excited. I have to go take them through the building, and you know, I need more hard hats to put on them because they're excited to see these things. Like, that's, you know, helping the development side and getting people engaged is super important, and the cities help a lot with that.
Now, Josh, your employees, I imagine, like the downtown environment as well, right?
Yeah, so there is some of that. You know, it's that we're 3 blocks from, you know, downtown Ferndale. You can go and walk for lunch. There's other restaurants that are even closer. That is important. We've actually, you know, in our shared workspace, we've recruited businesses from outside the county to be in the county because they want to be, they don't want to just be in some building on some road that they're not near anybody, you know, like that doesn't make sense. So they want to be in a place where there's a sense of community and there's some of that shared reciprocity for this person has this specialization and this person has this specialization, and it really helped them as a small business. And so we're seeing people coming to us that had been either located outside of the county or thinking about locating outside of the county and instead staying here, you know, so that's because the city has some of the amenities and community feel and has that environment that people want to be a part of. It's that live work that I had mentioned a little bit earlier that's super important for people, and we're seeing that.
It's interesting. You're both speaking of community, social environment, social interaction, live-work balance. Kevin, United Shore, has internalized it in that building to create that environment, and Josh, you're in a downtown that has that environment in the external sense. But those feelings and those experiences are key to that talent attraction, retention.
Sure, I mean, I think you almost see it as a cultural shift that's going to happen over time, that people need that sense of community, whether you're getting it outside of work, at work, where you live. Do you know your neighbors? That's missing for a lot of people. You know, we have a very disconnected, you know, way of communicating now, just because there are ways to communicate in a disconnected manner. And I think that you're going to see the communities that are focused on helping bring people together ultimately end up being more successful.
That's kind of an anecdotal story on that. One of our business development team is working with a company, and they've decided to move here from Chicago entirely, in the west end of Oakland County. And I mean, a lot of it is about X's and O's and dollars and cents. You know, the piece of the real estate, the workforce that they hope to hire, obviously the customers here are drawing them. Met the principal in a meeting a month or so ago, and I told him, I said, well, you know that right next to this building is a rail trail. It's, I mean, just oh, I'm a biker. I didn't realize that. You know, the decision was still kind of in the balance as to this location, and that really seemed to, in West Oakland, where, you know, there's a lot of room and a lot of space, but there happened to be an industrial facility, and just that little bit of a connection that, oh, I could hop on and get to the town center about a mile away, you know, was really an important piece. I'm surprised I mentioned it, but you're right on this rail trail that is taking place. So talk about, you know, the sense of place, even relative to that geography, still seems to be important. Yeah, the dollars and cents, the X's and O's have to line up, and usually incentives, right, Mark?
That's all things being equal.
Yeah.
Any
other? Go ahead.
I was just going to expound on one thing, because you said we're internalizing our entertainment or internalizing our community. That's true to one respect, but we feel we're igniting it. So we're also partnering with the soccer, Ultimate Soccer down the street. Our neighbors down the street, they're just moved in Williams International, another giant in the Oakland County family. We're forming leagues in soccer with them. So it spurs that relationship. They have an amenity, we're sharing, bringing more people together. So it's internally, we have to build something today, because there is nothing around. But ultimately, we're looking down the road to see if there's going to be a lot more businesses that are doing these things to become that synergy.
We did, John Bryan, John's a county employee, had a brief talk with Laura, a colleague of Kevin's, about the employee housing opportunities in Pontiac and some of the historic districts, and even the potential of, you know, shuttle transportation between those employee houses in the city and business. Yeah, we talk about volunteer opportunities in the downtown and with the trail groups in the city, and Laura was very, very excited about it.
Dan, I would like to add one thing about the pre-development meeting that you mentioned. I just wanted to mention, just a couple of weeks ago, it's a project in Lyon Township, and it's a developer builder who had a lot of connections within Lyon Township. And what he was doing is meeting individually with a lot of different departments, and sort of the go-to person in Lyon Township didn't like that, because they have a pre-development committee that likes to meet. So I met with the builder, and I guess I'm just saying this because most of the communities did raise their hand about having that, but if you don't, I think it's a really good process to have in being development ready. I sat down with the builder and sort of told them that, look, you're irritating a lot of people by going to these different departments and not going to the meeting itself. And from that, we did finally get together and have that meeting, and it made a difference. And it's a substantial project, but they were piecemealing it all through the different departments instead of going to the right person and having that committee talk to them and have everybody there at the table. And I know that probably happens in communities from time to time when a builder developer that knows people in the community and sort of tries to go around the process to think that he's going to shorten the process, but what he really does is make it more difficult and longer.
When the developer's really just putting the information and the communication out there. So do it once comprehensively.
Yeah, so it's good to have that committee.
Any comments or other questions for our great panelists? Let's give them one heck of a round of applause. I want to thank all three for their investments in Oakland County and the region and the state. We thank you very, very much. And if there's anything we can do for these communities here as you go forward, we'd be happy to serve you.
You're doing it right now.
Yeah, thank you. The next workshop is the Brownfield one?
September 7th, right here, EDQ and MEDC in Oakland County. So I think the registration is already
we'll be circulating.
And then the showcase on November 2nd. There are copies of the economic outlook forecast outside in the hallway, and also copies of the benchmark report if you want to pick one up. But if there's no other questions, we're done. And thank you very much.